Call the meeting to order at 6:31, and the first item is to approve the minutes from the special meeting on April 30th, 2019, and the regular meeting held on May 14th, 2019.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of special meeting April 30th and the regular meeting May 14th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next is to discuss the Neighborhood Assistance Act tax credit for the Deep River Congregational Church and Kirtland Commons. And we have folks from both, I think Allison and Joanne, if you want to approach the table and you can tell us about them. Okay, Allison.
I'll go first. Deep River Congregational Church is requesting the support of the town to support us to apply for the Neighborhood Assistance Act funds. And these are energy conservation and efficiency projects needed for really the church is an actively used public service building. We are actively used nearly 6 days a week, year-round, doubling basically as a community center and soup kitchen for residents of Deep River and the surrounding towns. And just to give you an idea of the extent of the use, besides the soup kitchen, we have Alcoholics Anonymous meetings there, Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts meetings, Guiding Eyes for the Blind puppy training, Horseshoe League uses the facilities, eating disorders, and just a number of different support groups that really value it. So keeping up the facility and making it energy efficient is important to us. This basic need is a phase 2 of replacing 70-year-old entry doors with Energy Star rated doors to eliminate draft. And installing insulation in certain walls in areas that currently have none to reduce energy efficiency. And the total proposed expenditure is $32,500.
$32,500, great. Thank you. Joanne?
So we are, the Deep River Housing Authority is looking to complete phase 3 of our modernization of our existing elevator, which is 26 years old. We have applied the last 2 years to the Neighborhood Assistance Act for energy credits, and although we've received all that we've applied for, we have not been successful in placing all of those credits, and I think we have about $42,000 in cash from the credits that we were able to place over the last 2 years, but we need probably about $120,000 total for the completion of the elevator modernization. So we're going to be applying for $80,000. We'd like to go for $80,000 again this year, and hopefully find a few companies that are willing to take these credits.
Great. Yeah, that seems to be the most difficult part of this task.
That is the most
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But they've been good, and like you say, you just go in phases.
Yeah.
Yep. And we've done this in the past with both of these groups. So,
Yes, and we've been successful
yeah.
all the years that we've applied, but
5 or 6 years.
yeah.
Yeah. So, unless you all have some more questions or anyone else has questions for them, what I'd like to do is just move this right forward and schedule a town meeting for June 11th after the next selectmen's meeting, so we can move that forward and you can have that done in time for your July meeting. Okay? So if we can get a motion to do that, that'd be great.
I move that for after the next meeting, we have that
Okay.
town meeting,
All right,
special
so
town meeting.
we will schedule a meeting for June 11th at 7 o'clock for both the Deep River Congregational Church and the Deep River Housing Authority for the Neighborhood Assistance Acts grants. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Thank
Thank
you.
you guys, great job.
Okay.
Let's try to get those credits. I'm trying to think of some other firms that you can reach out to, so.
We need to do the vote.
Yep, all those in favor of that?
Aye.
3-0, okay. That was Jimmy and Dwayne. Great. Okay, next on the agenda is a tax relief program. This is something that we set in place, Robin, you can correct me if I'm wrong on any of this kind of thing, but we set this in place a number of years ago. I want to suggest back probably 10 or more years ago, as an addition to what was called the Circuit Breakers program that the state of Connecticut did. The state provided up to $57,000 worth of tax relief to elderly or disabled property owners. The town, a number of years ago, voted and created an ordinance to add to that. And the past few years, I think it's been upwards around 50,000 or so.
In the budget.
And we put it in the budget.
Budget, yeah.
This year, I think we budgeted 52 based on what you expected.
Based on the past
Expectations,
expenditure.
right. We, so in all of our meetings for the budget, and it's approved as the budget, that we've done that, but the ordinance itself needs to be renewed. I think it's only runs for 3-year periods. So what I'd like to do is ask someone to make a motion to schedule a town meeting immediately, the same town meeting as that one, it's the same night for June 11th, to vote on whether or not to extend that ordinance and provide the additional relief.
I'll make a motion to go to town meeting for the tax relief program for June 11th, 7 o'clock.
Second?
Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next, we're gonna move along quickly. Tax collector reimbursements. We have just one this week, or this month. It is $554.62, and that was a sewer overpayment that needs to be refunded. So if we can get a motion to approve that repayment.
Make a motion for the repayment of $554.62 for the sewer.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I don't see Mike Danello here yet, so we can let's move him back and move over to Kevin Wakely with a continued farmers discussion, if Kevin would like to.
How are you?
Okay.
Good, I have some paperwork to hand you guys real quick. Thank you for having us back again, we appreciate your time. And as we talked about at the last meeting, we had given you a draft of a resolution letter from the town of Essex in regard to taxation on horses. We also included in this package one from Durham, which is that Article 5 section.
Right.
So, you know, we also have here a petition from, I haven't counted it, but there's quite a few names between these pages of people that are in support. Both customers of the facilities in town and business owners in town. So it's, you know, just a combination of townspeople and horse people, and just to give you some sense of, you know, it's not just a few people asking for it. So that was kind of the first piece of it, and you know, hopefully you guys could read it over. If we could, you know, adopt that, that would be great.
Well, I think we've briefly spoken about that, and I've been working on coming up with language using some of what you've provided and other research that we've done. I think North Stonington has done something similar, and a number of towns have done that. And I would suggest that sometime in the next month, we will have that resolution ready to bring to the town, and the town can vote on whether or not we're going to do that, if that's required. I'm not sure if the selectmen can do it or if it has to go to town meeting.
My understanding was that the selectmen could do it, but again, obviously you have to go through the order of operations.
Right.
But it would be great, you know, if verbally you guys could make a motion that you do at least agree upon it, and then if we have to get through the language before
we
you
don't need to
sign.
make any motions. We're moving forward on it. We will have some language done, and we will be doing something like this. I've actually been working with Robin for over a year to try to come up with something like this. So we're already in the process of relieving the tax burdens on horses that are under a certain value, and we're kind of trying to determine what that value might be.
I think
So-
that's, but I guess in reading the statutes from the other town, it's not about a certain value. It's about doing away with that And Joe,
Right.
correct me
Well,
if
not
I'm
on
wrong
all,
here.
not on all of the towns. Some of the towns have values based on it. Go ahead.
Well, when you were here at the last meeting, you asked us to come forward with the verbiage. and
Yeah,
We've done
yeah.
that.
I know, that's great, and it's appreciated, and I've been using that in the last 2 weeks to try to get Deep Rivers something that I can present to the Board of Selectmen, and we can move forward. And you presented.
So the Board of Selectmen is more than just you
The
three.
Board of Selectmen is us three. So we three have it. I'm not asking these guys to do the legwork of actually putting that together. You provided verbiage from other towns. I'm taking that, putting it into language that will work for Deep River. And then from that language, we will present it to the Board of Selectmen, and you're all welcome to come to that and make sure, I'll send it off to Kevin if you like, and everybody can look at it and say, this is great, or this is horrible, it's not going to work for us.
I'm
Whichever-
sorry, I was just confused. I thought that you asked us to do the proper verbiage and we weren't
We
done
did,
that.
and actually,
Now we're just waiting for the next meeting.
At
again.
the time that I asked for that, Kevin, I didn't realize that part of Kevin's package already included a couple of those. He gave that to me towards the end of the conversation, so
No,
I
I think
think
we actually gave
Okay.
you the
We
beginning of
did,
the.
yeah.
all
we
right,
talked
my
about
recollection is wrong, I'll go back and watch the video.
We were just trying to do what you asked us to do and.
I appreciate that, and I'm trying to do what you asked me to do.
Okay, so
This
just
is,
clarifying.
I think we're all working towards the same thing. We're going to create an ordinance, a resolution, if that's what it is, that takes the relief, the taxation of horses off the table. And I'm doing some research on that, and we will have that for you.
So my question would be in regard to a value. You know, there's already statutes in place for $1,000 or under
Yeah,
exemption.
correct.
That was set by the state already.
Mhm.
I guess, you know, the concern would be, at what point do we start understanding the value of horses? So if
Well, just like everything, Kevin, I think that we have to put some faith in the reports that are being given to us. When you tell us this horse is worth 50,000, then we believe that. Or if you tell us it's worth 1,000, we believe that. I'm only suggesting that there be a value because some of the resolutions that I've seen have a value placed on them. So I'm trying to organize this. I understand that you would like it to be carte blanche. There's no taxation on any horses. I'm not certain that that's something that this Board of Selectmen is willing to do. I am certain that we are willing to move forward with a resolution. That I'm confident of. Whether there is a value that we can place on a horse is something that we're researching. We're going to do this. It's just not done today. It will be done soon.
would it be possible, the towns that you've seen that have some value in these resolutions, to forward those to us so we could also
Absolutely.
understand what that is?
Yeah,
To be prepared to talk about it?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of a timeline, I mean, could we get you know, is it something that's gonna take a month, you think, or 2 months?
Well, I'd like to say it'll be ready for the next Board of Selectmen's meeting, but I can't guarantee that. I'm driving around to Connecticut with Mike Danello to look for speed things. There's a lot of things happening. I'm working on this. I would suggest that my goal is to have it for a month from now, but I certainly am going to try to have it for 2 weeks.
And just to add to that, ideally it would be done prior to October 1st of 19, because that would be our next 10-1 date to
Right.
establish, so we have
Effective.
time.
That's it.
Correct.
So if
I
it's,
would go so far as to say that would be a drop dead, that we'll have something
right,
done
so as
well
long as
before
it's
that.
done prior to that, then we're all on the same page, and typically the town attorney will need to review
Oh, yeah.
the language.
Yeah.
I have a question on the value
Okay.
of the horses, and I just, because I think we all need to understand, you know, collectively, the horse community needs to understand, who determines the value? I mean, are you basically saying that, you know, the owners are to just, you know, there's a lot to the value of an animal. I think I brought this up last time.
Mhm.
You know, your dog might be worth $20,000 to you because you love it.
Mhm.
But that doesn't, there is not always a set paper value on an animal, like there's no blue book.
That's, yeah.
Like,
that's
there's
right.
not a blue book of horses,
Yeah.
there's a different value. So if I say, my horse is worth $500, and you say, well, you know, it's a young horse and it looks healthy, are you gonna come back and try to challenge? I mean, there's no,
I would not expect that that would be the case. I think there would be some, there's a burden of trust, I guess, that goes into this kind of thing, and I think that's a little bit of why we're here. And we certainly don't expect Robin to go out and learn all about horses. You know? And that's, I think that's part of why these resolutions are happening, because the work that goes into that kind of thing is not, it doesn't value that effort.
Right, exactly, the amount of paperwork it's gonna take for you to send out, collect,
Well,
track, and do it all, are you gonna get any revenue back that's gonna cover Robin and everybody else's costs? Because most people, to be quite honest, aren't gonna be like, oh yeah, I paid $100,000 for my horse. I mean, it's just not, and so then you're putting the burden on Robin and anybody else in the assessor's office, and is your revenue that you gain gonna be even worth the time and effort it's gonna take to chase it down? I think that's why a lot of towns have just gone forth with absolving the horse tax, because there is no way to determine a value of a horse. I mean, if you're in a huge sales market, that's one thing, but you're speaking to a lot of people that own them as pets, and I might have spent $5,000 when I bought my horse, but you know, issues could have come across it over time and age and all that, there is no written value on these animals. And so I mean, I know for Robin, it's a lot of work and tracking and paperwork and mailing and stamps and all that doesn't probably end up with the high side of the revenue for you.
Right.
Yeah.
So-
But on the other side of that, when the Grand Center Secretariat comes up to Larimar to hang around for a while, we will know that their value is more than $50,000. So, you know.
Did not do that.
There's no money in horses, we can all
Why,
tell you
they're
that,
not?
there is none. It's a labor
Yeah,
of
I
love.
know. The horses are not worth anything, I know.
I kept a horse with Mike and Cheryl Hayes for many, many years. I never heard anything. My horse trailer, yes, but this goes back a long time.
Well,
My
Robin's
horses
been
were
around, how long
never-
have you been
Okay, they
working?
weren't show horses either.
26 years, yes. So typically, Michael and Cheryl Hayes were not under the Farm 490. They did not have a farm exemption out at that parcel. So if I missed a horse, then I missed it, Jane. And I did know you had a personal horse, because we've talked about it before, but did I send you a
And
personal?
so did Mike and Cheryl.
Yeah. So if I'm aware of it and they're boarded, and there's many, well, not many, but there's a few in town that have horses on their private property, and they do file. So when we become aware of it, the personal property declarations are posted. Some of the onus is on the horse owner, but that is a difficult one. And to your response, we've always taken on faith,
Right.
we being in our office, that you know the value of your horse
Right.
better than I would. And if you paid $5 for it, and then a year later, it's only worth $1,000 for whatever reasons, I've always taken that on
I know,
faith.
yeah.
You know, it's, and ideally, I've spoken to Angus before, if we could come to if it's possible within a local option, to not have me have to send the paper to the borders and then back, yes, you're saving a lot of time and effort. I don't know how that would be written. I'll be happy to, hopefully there's something in that.
How much revenue actually gets,
I was just gonna ask the same question.
Yeah, I
For-
haven't, not including your personal horses.
no, I'm talking about all the horses.
For the boarding,
Or maybe-
not including, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head to include the boarders, but I think for those that were not exempt, as you know, there's a $1,000 exemption per horse. I think the net assessment was around 145, 146,000. So that would equate to maybe 5,000, 6,000 in taxes at the current mill rate. So that's what we're talking, $5,000 or $6,000 for, as you know, the effort for the listing and the personal property. But in that figure, please let me asterisk, that does not include your horses, or I was only looking at the non-farm owners. So I think most of yours are exempted, you know, based on, you file a whole different application.
So I guess one question I would have, because obviously you have had some discussion as to, you know, doing a resolution of this, you know, in regard to this specific thing. What is the hesitation to?
I've got to write it, Kevin.
No,
It's got to be fair.
I'd like to just ask a question. I'm not,
Okay. There's no hesitation whatsoever, we're trying to do it.
well, I'm just going to finish my sentence. In terms of the value, what, if the other towns have said this is, the state's already put the 1,000 in, why set it at a higher number, I guess? What's the hesitation on your part?
The only hesitation I have is that I'm continuing to do research. I'm trying to determine what the standard for the state is, not because you're telling me that this is what it is. I'm trying to do the research so that I can ensure that the town is getting the service that it deserves. That's all. There's no hesitation in the resolution. The hesitation is whether or not we're able to set a limit and whether we want to set a limit. And that is something that we will discuss and continue to discuss when I find more information.
Okay, great. And then the last, on your package, the last page was some questions that came up in regard to the new boarding facility income and expense survey. And we did, you did get back to us in time, and I appreciate that. And at this point, we're planning on filing it on time. But I think there were quite a few kind of questions that arose in regard to, how this statute is being used. Joe Nichols has helped us quite a bit, and we've been in contact with, the Department of Agriculture and a lot of OPM, Yukon Extension to get some information from their equine specialists, and we're just not 100% sure as to how the application applies.
Okay. Let me speak a little bit. I have a little more knowledge now than I did 2 weeks ago, so I can speak a little bit to how this form, why this form is being used this year and hadn't been used in the past.
Great.
I can also speak to why this is the first year this is being sent out. It's not the first year it's the first year that this particular form is being sent out. But every town, the year prior, in a year or so prior to the revaluation, has to assess the properties that are going to be taxed. That includes farms, and I think the farmers that were in Deep River prior to Larimar and Foggy Meadow have been cooperative and have been providing information on their boarding facilities, maybe in a different form, but providing that information in a manner that was usable. It may not have been a happy exchange, but it was information that was exchanged that made it fair and practical for the community to fairly assess the boarding facility. In the last couple of years, there's been a tremendous amount of resistance from one of the new farms about having to report that information. As a result of that, the 4 farms in town now that do board this new form or different form is being sent out in an effort to get a fair and honest assessment of the boarding facilities. That's the only reason that this form has changed. Prior to a year ago or so, we didn't, as far as I know, we had fair assessments that were made based on information that was provided by the existing boarding facilities. There's been a tremendous amount of resistance in the last year and a half or so about providing this information. So Robin, as is her purview, determined that this form might be a better way to get the same information from all of the farms. So one farm that's much larger has to fill out the same paperwork that the smaller farm didn't have to fill out before, but does now because the larger farm did not particularly want to answer those questions.
So I guess you're referring to us by saying that. I know that we've given you the list of horses, in terms of the personal property declaration. I've given Robin an itemized all our equipment with VIN numbers. We've had nice conversations about that. So I don't know that that's really applicable for us. The conversation tonight, I don't know that that helps one way or another to say that it was because somebody wasn't
Those are two
disclosing
different
information.
things, Kevin.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
that's personal property, and now we're talking about the valuation of the land and buildings. So the personal property is what the examples you've just presented.
So there are two
different-
separate items.
So I guess in terms of, to kind of break this down a little bit, the one question we had was which statute, the cover letter kind of says that something changed. And Joan could probably help support this a little bit, but we've done some research with 12-63C, and it was amended in 2010. But what was the statutory change since then that's actually allowed this practice to be used with horses? Because that's, Joan, I know also looked into the kind of back, you're citing section C, but B and A also talk about real estate. If you guys really start to look at the statute. So my question, I guess, would be to you and Robin, what was the change that's referred to that was made after 10 that makes this applicable now?
What I was referencing in the income and expense statements is in the past, prior to the revaluations, I've received Schedule Fs or the 1065s from the boarding facilities, and the income or from those filings is what we use for the income approach for the revaluations. So as far as a change, the ability to use the income and expense analysis for a boarding facility has always been there. But again, because I need to treat everybody fairly and keep everything on the same playing field in preparation for the 2020 revaluation, there I'm looking for the information so as we can set the new fair market values. My job is to set a fair market value for 2020 and then apply the use assessments to the land after that fact. So this is all in preparation for the 2020 revaluation.
Okay, because like I said, it's a little confusing. I think we were all kind of confused that you're stating the statute in a change.
What do you mean?
Because your language, I'm just going to see what the cover letter says here.
Sure.
It says something along the lines of,
And I do think Angus pointed out to me, and maybe you're referencing this, Kevin, that I said under the legislative changes to the statute, we cannot be as flexible as we've been in the past.
correct.
So this
what
is
was the change?
This was a cover letter to everybody, and in preparation for the 2015 revaluation, there had been a change to the statutes as far as the penalties and going to the board, and that was in reference. This is a cover letter that goes to all. So probably could have taken that line out for
The cover
preparation.
letter that we got, other businesses in town got too?
All, yes.
Identical, it's not tailored to each business?
Cover letter.
The cover letter goes to everybody. This is the same cover letter that all commercial rental real estate parcels get.
So, okay, so that helps to explain it, but I guess, so there really wasn't any statutory change that changes the use. I understand the penalty or that end of it, but the use of the statute has not changed since 10. Could we, I guess, and we don't need an answer tonight, but if it
Right.
has, what is that
I
statute?
think Joan has pretty
No.
much said that it has
It
not,
hasn't.
so I'm not gonna argue with Joan about that, and that's her job, is to figure that kind of stuff out. So I would suggest that, I would believe Joan that there has been no change since 2010.
Yeah, well, CM said there hadn't been a change to the law.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Now, there was Public Act 10152, and that added some technical language, took out simplistic things of submit it's now state submit versus the verbiage of to make available. So I think the language, and Joan may agree, made it a little less subjective. And so now this information, there's filed, the word is submit is used versus filed. So there was technical changes in that Public Act 152. So that was what I was referencing on the original, the cover letter, which would have been a change again, because this is every 5 years we're on the cycle. So this would be your first year in Deep River.
On the reval, you're saying?
On the revaluation, correct.
So you're saying that these guys received something similar to this in the last reval?
For probably, yes, they received, and they filed their Schedule Fs with me, which provides the same information, but now on the income and expense forms, it helps me to break it out. So for instance, your boarding and lessons, you can kind of lump sum in. So now on this income and expense forms, I'm able to drill in, and it's asking you to separate it, and it gives me the ability to audit if there's anything. So that's under the statute. it gives the assessor's office kind of more of a uniform, again, playing field.
Yeah, I guess it's just confusing, because I've read through the statute, I'm sure you guys have at this point too. And as Joan had explained to me, it's really in relation to rental properties. So I guess my question to you would be, in what year did the town decide that stalls were rental properties?
It never did make that change. The format of asking the question changed. But the farmers prior to this,
Have always,
Always
my
filled out
boarding
the-
facilities always
So
filed
Which
their
were
income.
the two facilities that filed?
Baldwin Stables, and I don't recall the name of, Amanda Strain is her name, she has a name for her facility up there. Those are the two facilities that have faithfully filed for the revaluation cycles.
So another question we had was, what was the criteria for who got one of these forms? Because there are only 4 here,
Yes.
but are there really only 4 people that are charging for boarding in town? Do we know that for a fact? I mean, what's the
As far
criteria?
as zoning would be able to, as far as my records show, those are the only 4 facilities that I know are zoned for this.
Okay.
I guess I have to jump in here because I didn't realize that this is what the information was being used for. Especially when we got these type of things, I was kind of like flabbergasted that we're being considered commercial property and it's a rental income. I thought, being under the Public Act 490, that the Connecticut Farm Bureau Joan could probably help out. But I mean, these are boarding facility for horses. I mean, it's not like a
Her accountant was lost, she had no idea what to do, she said,
I
I've
mean,
never seen anything like this before.
So when I spent hours with her last week to fill out this paperwork, she basically just took off the shelf another one of her customers that had a car dealership, and it was basically the same verbiage. So
Well,
I'm on
and-
a farm, that guy's got asphalt and commercial,
We just don't see it.
so I don't know why.
And again, so your 490 use to the land is applied. So my job, regardless of if you are under 490 use assessment for your land, I still have to value it of what the fair market value would be of your parcel, regardless of the fact that you're receiving the 490 use on the land. So that is applied after the fact. But I, as the tax assessor for the town, still have to look at your facility as to what would this parcel sell for if it were in the open market? What would an investor be willing to pay if you, as when you purchased the property, what did you look at in the processes you went through to determine what you decided you ultimately paid for the property? So these are rental facilities, and if you brought an investor into any of your parcels, that the first thing they're going to look at is, all right, how many can I board here? What does this bring? And that we can capitalize into a valuation of the property, of the buildings, of the land and building. And then after that fact, I apply your 490 use to the land.
Because, all that money you're talking about, it's, how much money we're generating. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but this is a break-even business.
And
I mean,
Yeah.
if we're lucky, because it's so much work, and it's unbelievable that, the money that it does come in, it still doesn't pay the bill, so, but
And-
we're still getting taxed on it.
Well, and that aids to your cause as far as, so this is the income that you're generating, and this is what this type of facility, this size, say you have 20 stalls, and now we have 2 newer versions, right on Winthrop Road, then does that equate to a different valuation based on the size, the condition? So these are all 3 approaches to value, and that is one approach that I'm looking on to make sure that I'm not treating you like a brand new facility, or maybe there's different reasons why your parcel might not get the same boarding fees that another facility may get in town. So based on, if the income doesn't prove it, then my cost approach should be what we show on the property record cards. Then we need to adjust the cost approach appropriately to reflect what a true investor would pay for your parcel. And that is, every 5 years, that is the charge of this office and what we are required to do for the town. And you're right, John, in the end, you pay on it, but you have, looking at your Schedule Fs in the past, and this is my supporting reasoning why I can maybe depreciate something more or less, depending on what the income equates to and when we capitalize it.
I kind of feel like Angus, when he was growing up, he said he grew up on a dairy farm, thriving, and then the government comes in and
It was never thriving, it was always a lot of hard work. No, I know,
Yeah.
I know, I understand, but and I may be wrong in this, John, but I'm confident that completing this form is the only difference that you're going to see. You've been paying this all along. It's just a different way of answering the question. Kevin hasn't been because he's new to the communities, and this is their first
Just a confusing way.
owning of the property. Understanding that.
Our accountant was trying to fudge through this. It cost us a lot of hours just on that. A
Yeah,
lot of money just having our accountant try to figure out what the hell, excuse my French,
Yeah.
to do with this form.
Well, and I think in fairness, everybody, needs to understand that we've been in litigation for 2.5 years with the town now over some tax issues.
Mhm.
And under legal advice, we've given you what we've been asked to give you. The profit and income stuff, again, we're working on a settlement with the town's attorneys and we're trying to figure it out. We've asked for a lot of documentation back from the town and have not received any.
that,
So-
I don't know that that's accurate.
From our perspective, what we've gotten back, we've actually asked for charts evaluation on structures and different things, and we've given you, it's not an accurate depiction to tell the town that we're not disclosing the information. We've given you all the construction costs, we've given that in the interrogatories and documentation that was asked of us. So I
The
think.
meeting that I was at between your office and Robin's office was very contentious, and there was an awful lot of back and forth between who's provided what and who hasn't provided what.
Yeah.
So I'm simply reporting to the community at large that this is not anything new as has been reported. The form is new, as we talked about last week. The change is in the response from the farms.
So kind of in that same, absolutely. please.
So, stepping back to their conversation, the thing with putting a value on a horse property is, I, as the trainer, I'm the value in the property. Just because I have 14 stalls doesn't mean Joe Schmo could come and provide the services that Stan and I can provide. So it's very gray, and I don't take that income. Everything goes back into it. So it's, yes, I have 14 stalls. The next person that maybe buys the property, which we're never gonna sell, might want a trail riding facility. They can't charge what I charge because they're not me. So it's so gray. I'd love it to be a little bit more black and white of why you need to know if I charge $20 to blanket a month.
So part of the reason, and that was what a little bit of the frustration with the Schedule F is those lessons in boarding were kind of lumped together as an income. So what I tried to arrive at by creating, years ago, the income and expense form was dictated by the state of Connecticut had it. So I don't know how many years ago, maybe 20, it could have been less than that. The assessors were, the state of Connecticut stated the assessors have to create the income and expense forms. So now I tried to split it out, and I did get to speak with your accountant, and we were able to work through it, but I want you need to pull out what your fees are for what you bring to the table, because it's the income. I'm gonna have a big, right. So it is your expertise in the training or what you do should not be included in the income. And that would have misled me based on your lump sum here. So now if I can extract that, this is just the income attributable to the facility, to the land and buildings.
Okay.
So Schedule F, you were
But that
lumping
doesn't
it
mean
together.
The next person coming along can make that.
Exactly, yes,
Well, we're not
and
making
that's
it.
why we look at it.
We're not making that.
We're not. And every 5 years, that is my charge, is every 5 years to look at this, and maybe something does change. And that is the first thing that a court is going to want to know is, what is the income on this type of property? So we just need to support it in the assessor's office to have those answers. And I do think, as in the past, that this information only helps get us to a fair and equitable value, which is really what we're arriving at.
What's the difference between what our total income is versus how we get to the total income? I don't understand that. I mean, charging what we charge to hold the horses, or I've never heard of questions like that before.
I think that comes back to the 490. The 490 does not speak to, in my understanding anyway,
I mean, just
of
start
the
trading.
value of the properties.
Income versus expenses, wouldn't that do it? That's where I'm lost.
Attributable to the building, it's some of the expenses we look at are allowable or not allowable, and then when you're looking at that, one facility may be able to board their horses in the stalls and get one fee, where another facility, so that's all I'm looking
Like the
at.
blanketing fees and stuff, I mean, if we make our income off of, like, we don't charge for blanketing, but if we did charge for blanketing, what difference does it make to you guys how we make that income? I guess that's where I'm confused.
Because again, the income approach to valuation is looking at what this property can do and what it can support. And if those are, I was looking at characteristics to each of the facilities. So all of a sudden, if I have a facility that is getting, 500 a
Right,
month,
but
so it's just a way of arriving at a value.
But I mean, some people will charge, $750 for board, and then nickel and dime every extra charge on top of that. And some will charge $1,000 or $1,200, and they won't charge for all the extra fees. So I guess I just don't understand what the difference is to you guys. Do you know what I mean? I mean,
So I can look at it apples to apples. So if you just wrote to me that you're getting 1,000 boarding per month, and this gentleman over here is telling me $750, and I don't know that you're nickel and diming over here, but you're all inclusive,
If you
then
knew our total income and expenses per year,
It's the same
wouldn't that
number,
be
it's the
it?
same number and a lot less paperwork for everyone.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
I
I'm just confused,
guess,
that's all.
I'm hearing everybody in the room, it's hard to understand that information is beneficial to you in a way of generating a different number than what the appraisal really is. And again, part of the feeling I think is obviously there's been an influx of horse farms in town, 2 new farms, right? But now I feel like, I'm a little concerned that, it's a hope to boost revenue in town.
Nope.
no.
Because, I guess my next question was, with the POCD that, we referred to last week, there is a portion of that speaks specifically to tax relief for agriculture. And in regard to what's being used out of the 490 and what's not being used out of the 490 and how it all kind of meshes with that POCD, how is the town's position that is the assessing body separate from what the town wants with that POCD? I mean, are there any checks and balances when something like this is drafted to go over? I mean, you said to me when I gave it to you that you hadn't seen the form before it went out to us. So if it comes out of the assessor's office,
That's correct,
does legal counsel look at it before it goes out? Was that reviewed
I'm
legally?
sure that the assessors, legal counsel does, but that's a different counsel.
No, something by the town. Is the town's legal counsel aware of it?
Before I sent that form out, I did have it reviewed by the attorney that represents us in appeals, and he didn't see anything inappropriate about it. So, and it's the same information. I did, in all honesty, tried to gear it so it would be easier for you to fill out. I think I missed supplies, kind of breaking that column out from your accountant had pointed out that instead of the other. So there's room for improvement on it, but it asks for the same thing that the main form that the majority of our taxpayers get. They're all geared and arriving at the same allocation of how these income and expenses are, but we have a form for marinas, we have a form for cell towers, we have a form for bed and breakfast restaurants, you know, and it's, to the most, it was helpful. It would have been much easier for me to send the main form out, and I'll be happy to do that next year, you know, if this form was that terrible. It asks for the same things, and I'm looking for any advice you may have. But if you like the form that most taxpayers, commercial rental properties get, I'll be happy to use that one next year.
Well, I think that's where exactly, I think that's what the underlying kind of
That's the
argument
problem I'm
is.
having, Robin. It's kind
Yeah.
of like when you say it's commercial, it's
Commercial
like,
rental.
I feel like
Yeah.
I'm at the gas station across the street, or I'm at,
Yeah, no.
you know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
commercial.
I
mean-
understand what you're saying. In our language, it's a rental property, commercial rental. Anything that's rental income is
So
kind
how
of
does,
coded that.
so how does farm fit into this formula that you're talking about?
After a value is arrived at, the farm use is applied. So if you were to pull your property record cards, you would see the fair market value, and then you would see the farm use applied to it. So if you were to take your 70% assessment, it does not equate to the fair market value.
You know, I guess from, and I'm speaking for the group, and if they don't agree, that's okay, but I think, you know, in the POCD, and I think everybody has really promoted this as a pro-agricultural town. We're just concerned that we're not feeling the love in terms of some of this stuff, you know, and we're happy to obviously pay what we owe. That's fair, but I think the
Not
PA,
being treated as agriculture.
the
What is
P-
that?
We're not being treated really as agriculture. This
Yeah, it
is coming
just
back to
feels-
considering this as a commercial thing. We've talked to the Farm Bureau, we've talked to the Department of Ag. They wrote us letters from the very beginning before we even had trouble. And it was kind of ignored in the town. You're a big facility, you're big, brand new, you can pay the taxes.
I agree with that.
No one ever
No,
said that to me
no.
from the town.
No.
So I guess, you know, at this point, it sounds like statutorily we have to file this year, which we will do, you know, because that's what we need to do. But I would ask that with some of this stuff going forward, maybe it could be a little more open before it's transitioned over, because I think, you know, that there's a sense of a lack of transparency in terms of how some of the valuation is really done. And that's where we're trying to understand the process, and we're trying to give you what you need. But we also, I mean, they've been here since, what'd you say, 2005? Three, and they're obviously seeing the shift too, so you can say that it's because we're in town and we're trying to stir it up. We're not, we're just trying to make sure that we're getting the protection that the statutes that were set in 1950, 63, were set up to provide for farmers.
Correct.
Because this is different than most towns in Connecticut. I don't know any other towns that have sent out that form to farms.
Well, we can tell you some of them that have, because we've asked that question.
Do you want me to list them?
No.
Just one more, like, just to the feeling of love thing. I mean, I get it. No offense, you guys are gonna pay a little more taxes than we do, but that's, you know, we get that.
Understandable.
And we're okay with paying what we need to pay, but when you talk about feeling the love, sometimes it's the little things. And by the little things, I'm gonna go back to the horse tax from the beginning of this meeting. We've had several conversations. Andrea has talked with Robin, and she has said it would be so easy to get rid of this tax. You said you get a petition, you get people lined up.
Not a
She said-
petition, but yeah.
Well, you said it would be really, and this was 2 years ago. And we kind of, we didn't get around to it, but with everything going on, we did. And we got around to doing what we need to do, and we thought maybe you guys would vote on it last meeting. Well, you didn't, that's okay. So we did our homework, and we came back, and we thought, we'll vote on it this meeting, and you didn't. But that's okay, but I'm just saying, that's the feeling of love. Or not feeling the love, and that's just a feeling that we get, so that's.
Well, I'm
done.
sorry for
But
that.
there's
I am
plenty
sorry
of
for
feeling the
that.
love part. It's in the little things.
we're not gonna vote on a resolution that we haven't had 5 minutes to read. So we will look at this, and we will do this, and you will get that, okay? And I apologize if it's taken 2 years. No one came to me 2 years ago and said we have to do this.
I did.
I
say
don't-
that we did. We let it go.
I don't remember you coming to the, I don't remember you coming to the Board of Selectmen, and I apologize for
We
that.
didn't. I said we didn't.
This should-
But if it was a little thing, we thought it was gonna be a little thing.
Well, hopefully in the end, it will be a little thing. We'll have a little meeting and everyone will come and we'll all feel a little happier when we get done with that, sometime in the next week or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. But it will definitely be well before the October deadline that we just talked about. I will hope that it's in June, hopefully before the 4th of July, so.
I just want to just also mention too, when we were talking about the 4 boarding facilities in Deep River, there are more. And nobody's looking to throw people under the bus.
Okay.
There are 2 facilities for sale.
Turn off the camera.
I'm not, I'm just saying that there are 2 facilities for sale on Baldwin Staples Road right now. And if one of them is a significant size boarding facility, if you want people to come into this town and they are hearing this going on, those properties aren't gonna sell. Because who's gonna wanna get into this? And one of them specifically would pretty much only be used as a commercial facility. Nobody needs a barn. Most people don't need a barn that big. Most of us don't own that many horses. But if this is going on and this is what people start understanding is the way that the horse community is being treated in the town and not feeling the love, those are gonna sit, and I know, I do actually understand, Robin, when you're explaining what your purpose was, it makes sense, but then involve the horse community to maybe come to these decisions instead of making everybody feel like, we need to be on the defensive because, like I said, there's two facilities there. One of them's small and one of them is larger, but they're both for sale and they could very well just sit there because who's gonna wanna jump into this situation? So.
And then you're saying that the commercial part of it is like, the business part of it is really big because, Karen's the trainer and she makes good money as well as the others in the room too. But now if somebody comes in who's not a trainer, buys one of these farms, how are they gonna afford to buy the property because it's all jacked up because of the, maybe I'm saying something wrong.
But that's the whole purpose of making sure we're looking at it appropriately, so things don't get jacked up without knowing how to allocate the things. So it's strictly a method of arriving at a fair market value.
And I do have to say that, this isn't my strongest suit, this kind of stuff, so I rely on my accountant and my bookkeepers to take care of this kind of stuff. So when it got brought to my attention and then it says commercial on it, and so now we're paying a different price for that 10 by 10 stall or 12 by 12 stall.
And again, you've filed faithfully. I think this will be your 3 years. And have you ever felt that you were paying inappropriately on the arena or the barn? I've been out there, we've walked it, so,
We just
and
never really
that's.
questioned it before,
Right.
Yeah,
But now that it's kind of like, the lights are on and I'm reading all the stuff and it's kind of like overwhelming.
Okay.
And I feel bad for the other farmers here that are getting to see this for the first time.
I helped write the plan of conservation and development, and the townspeople really wanted to encourage agricultural pursuits. This is not going to encourage agricultural pursuits. Also, these barns, they may look very fancy, yours does. But they run on a very slim margin. They lose a couple of horses because somebody says, I don't need this aggravation. I can move over to another town. 30 years ago, Chester tried it, they dropped it. 8 years ago, Killingworth tried it, they dropped it.
well, they
You can always
created
move, your
local
horse is not a
options.
barnacle. It can move. You move it to another town, Kevin or whoever loses a couple of horses, they're out of business. And that's not what we wanted when we drew up the plan of conservation and development. We wanted to encourage agriculture and farm pursuits.
And just to support Jane's kind of comment there, you know, we have had customers leave that have said that they have not paid that tax in other towns. So I do think it's very much a real, you know, deterrent. So.
By next year, they won't be.
Well, let's hope the language is as such in your draft of the resolution, and we'll look for it, you know, in the near future. I think the other thing, just to kind of throw out on the table, you know, the form is the form, and, you know, at this point, I guess we got to do what we have to do. Not happy about it, but we're going to give you the information. And obviously, as our litigation goes forward, you know, hopefully we can come to a resolution, and you'll see that we're not making any money either. So the reality of it is that, you know, we're all trying, and I think this is an attempt to talk about it and do it in a productive manner. But the horse tax is an issue. I think, you know, some other things that have come up, concerns, and just for you guys to start researching is the commercial valuations under the buildings. And it doesn't need to be discussed tonight, but not at PA 490 values, but at a commercial value. And I don't know that the 490 really supports the 490 going under the building, so I think it's something, and Joan could definitely tell you about it a lot better than I could. But the last thing is the 100,000 building exemptions that you guys can also opt in, should be looked into going forward. Would be a suggestion from us.
Hey, one comment before we go through. Just to clarify what you're saying with the breakdown of stuff. When you talk to the Department of Agriculture, horse boarding is determined as being the business. The lessons are not. So you do not combine them on your Schedule F. So I don't know how it's irrelevant.
Our Schedule F, we were told just to do the boarding part,
Yeah,
not the
because
lessons.
lessons are not
Not,
included.
and some of the Schedule Fs that I've reviewed and other have combined them. So if yours did not, that would have been simplistic for me to see that. So on the INE form, it does have you list things separately, and part of it was just the characteristics of your farm, you know.
So should Schedule F be both, or just?
Schedule F should tie right into what you're reporting on this income and expense form. Usually, the information is there on it, and then it allocates it in a way that I know that, okay, if you were trying to include, say, a mortgage payment as an expense, it's then, you know, that's not an allowable expense for taxation. So, you know, those are the things that I'm looking at, just so I can put, again, everybody on an even keel. And then it should tie into, you know, you've just built your facility, and we're hoping that the income will show that the cost approach and the income approach should kind of marry up with each other.
Joan Nichols, Connecticut Farm Bureau. Two things I just want to, I guess one is a question or a comment. The statute that was passed that allows a municipality to opt out of taxing horses, Connecticut Farm Bureau worked with the Connecticut Association of Assessing Officers. We all, and the Department of Ag, we actually all sat at the table before that legislative session opened up, and the assessors asked us if we would help support that legislation. In that legislation, it's enabling legislation. There is no allowable threshold. You either exempt the horses, you know, or you don't.
So Killingworth,
it's enabling legislation, so it's, you
So
adopt the
Killingworth
language in the
acting
statute.
illegally?
So there is no threat, you're talking about setting an exemption for the horses up to a certain value, and the way the law was written is that doesn't exist in the statute.
Okay, so Killingworth is acting illegally when they do
I
that.
don't know what Killingworth did, I'm just telling you what the
Okay.
statute says.
Okay. Thank you, I was asking just.
Yeah, and then one other
follow up.
question. I understand what Robin's referring to when you have to have a full valuation on a piece of land. Anybody that looks at real estate field cards for farmland, and I look at hundreds of them during the course of the year, I always have to explain to the farmers that you have the full value of the land, and then you have your corrected value, which is your 490 value, and that's your assessment. So I understand you need some methodology. So, but really, at the end of the day, because everybody here that owns farms and has farmland is all being assessed, all of the farmland is under the 490 value, correct? All the
Except for what's
acreage
under-
of all of these
All the
farms
the allowable
Oh.
acreage which is in use, so it's a 490
for
use.
agriculture.
For
So the
agriculture,
land-
tillable A, B, C, D.
Right, so I would
Pasture.
assume just as an example, these are horse farms, so I'm assuming the majority of it is pasture. There may be some cropland if you do your own hay. So all of that acreage, every acre of it, is in the farmland classification. For instance, if it's all pasture land, they may have cropland, then they may have some woods, they may have some wetlands, then they have their pasture, which means that there is no other value to worry about. You have to have your full value, but then that only comes into play if you have to apply the conveyance tax. Because as you've explained to everybody in this room, you've got the full value, but then you have the corrected value, which is your 490. Pasture is $240 an acre right now, or whatever the value is, $140 an acre.
140.
140. So I'm assuming that everybody here that has farmland, pasture land, including the land under and around their farm buildings, is all being taxed as pasture at 140 an acre, in which case this number only applies if the conveyance tax came into play, correct?
I disagree. So anything that's in use and up to as, which was recently changed, so I believe the way the law is written, and I might be misphrasing, but the new current statute, which went into effect for 10/1/18, allows, if the land is in use, right up to the edge of the building. So if you have pasture land right up to the edge of your building, then that can go under pasture. If you have a garden or you're tillable, then that land would be under tillable A.
Okay.
So,
But it doesn't include the land under the barn.
no.
Correct.
Because that's not farming?
I think that's where the discrepancy, not
So
just
we
in this
don't have to
room.
go into it, but
Right, but it's
that-
something that needs,
part of
I think
the-
we need
Yeah,
to,
and
we
I
need to
think
dig into it a little
legislatively,
more.
it would,
I think
it
that's-
needs to be cleared up, but that's a whole different,
Yeah.
that's not a Deep River issue. That is,
Except that the state definition of agriculture includes farm buildings.
you can have a farm building local option,
No, I'm
correct? So what are
that
you
in
saying under the building,
definition of
Jane?
agriculture,
That's
It
not what our
includes
attorneys,
farm building.
our attorneys have not, disagree with that, so. no.
So, again, kind of in full circle, back to POCD and what the goal of trying to get that together. You know, I think these are some concerns, and, you know, we appreciate you guys listening patiently and understanding that, you know, we're concerned, we love the town, you know, everybody in town has been great, and we want to stay here. But as Jack and Stan and Jill, you know, everybody will point out, you know, it's not just raking in money. We're farming and we're working really hard at it.
Which is why I think when you guys first moved in, we offered and you accepted, so we loaned you our containers to bring material off of your property.
Dick
We
Smith
worked-
had offered that.
Yeah, that's
before we
right.
had passed.
Right, and we continued forth with that work. We worked with you on getting electricity across the road before it was paved. We worked with you.
That's another conversation. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that
So,
depiction
okay.
of that scenario.
Okay. Well, that's good. We'll have other conversations then. Because I really think that until this issue came up, and other than you, I did not understand at all that Deep River was unwelcoming or an unpleasant place for farmers to be. And I'd like to continue the conversation, because if that is in fact true, then we would like to work against that. But this is brand spanking new to me. So
Well, I
I'd
think-
like to continue the conversation with some of the farmers around.
I think you guys just entertaining and working on this resolution is a great feather in your caps to say that you are gonna try to do that. So we appreciate it, and I think that shows, you know, a level of trust in us and trying to do that, so we
We want
appreciate it.
transparency too, Kevin. You had brought up before about no transparency. That's the last thing I want. I want transparency as a selectman, and I'm sure the other two will vouch with me, that we want to work with everyone, but let's find a solution. You know, I know the lady over here wanted it done quick. We want to get it done also, because we have a lot going on in town.
Sure.
So we're all working, you know, with Angus. Angus is the leader, and Jimmy and I are working with him. So we want to get this resolved, just like everyone else does. Trust us, you know, and I want transparency.
And as we've discussed before, the local option for the horses has been brought out probably since the first year that legislation was enacted. And this is the first time that I'm happy that someone has presented something to the board. So it gives you something to work forward with. But this,
And in our meeting at your facility, I said it before, is that this is the forum to do it. This is, everybody's got to get out here, and that's only, when was that meeting? 3 weeks, 4 weeks, less than a month ago. You know, and I think it's great, and everybody has to communicate, and the transparency has to be there, but you can't, a month is a short amount of time, and I know we did ask for some language. I don't feel we ever said that we were gonna vote on it tonight. We asked you to come up with some verbiage so that we could look at it, and we're not going to. I would vote against it, to do it tonight. Now, we have to look at it, and we need to do it, and it probably will be done in one form or another. It will be done, but it's not gonna be done, you know, tonight, so.
Which is, I think is fair.
Yeah.
So,
You know, and this is something, and it was a little controversial to bring up, and I'm not actually bringing up the actual issue, but it's a little bit in terms of trusting the selectmen and trusting coming here and making a difference. You know, 2.5 years ago, we came into a selectmen's meeting and we asked for speed bumps on Bar Road. It was voted as a, yeah, we'll go ahead and do it. It was never touched.
They won't allow it.
And that, I think, could be dug into. As I said, it's not what, I'm not actually talking about the issue. It's more about being able to come into your town, your community, and make a difference, and be able to sit here and trust you guys to say, okay, if we bring an issue and there are people behind us saying we have an issue here, that anything actually will be done without without going to the courts. Because that's a very frustrating part about being, you know, you don't want to be in a town where you have to go to the courts to prove what you feel like is your rights. So again,
I think it was my second conversation with Kevin was the threat that you were gonna go to the courts if we paved Bar Road, so, you know, it works both ways, is what I'm trying to say. I mean, there needs to be some communication and some trust both ways. So. Is there anything else? Any other comments?
potholes was great, because then they didn't speed.
They had them for 30 years. The Malcarney's that down the far end, I know wanted it to stay unpaved, but that is for another conversation. But thank you, we appreciate you listening.
Thank you.
And again, I'd like to say thank you for the future farmers coming again.
Yeah, it's great to see you.
I think it's-
Great to see
I think it's really good for them to see this kind of stuff.
Involved in
because-
government.
Yeah, like I said before, I was in FFA myself, and they do require these kids to take control of a project. And that's from the taxes to the profits to the expenditures, everything, you know, so it's really good for these guys to learn.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thanks for coming again. It's good to see you. The only other item left on the agenda is traffic calming update requested by Mike Danella, and I don't see Mike here. Dawn has waited patiently to help with that.
Learned a lot about horses.
So we'll,
Turn in your,
Can I come and ride some?
if it's okay to table, if it's okay with you guys, we'll just table that until the next meeting.
I would think that, yeah, that Mike should be here.
Mike wants to be here for that. I will tell you that I have spoken with the state at length, and we're trying to arrange a meeting for Mike and anybody that he wants to go up to Hartford and talk with the fellow that wrote the letter back to him. So that's what he was asking for. So we'll table that. We have an audience of citizens. There's plenty of folks. Is there anything else that we'd like to speak about? Then, because we have a Board of Finance meeting that's already 15 minutes late, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rob.
Good evening, everyone. This is the Deep River Board of Finance. We have been in session for approximately 10 minutes, and we are going to resume. We are having a presentation from Mahoney and Sable pertaining to their conclusions in the last audit that ended June 2018. All right, Mike, back to you. Very good.
So I will pick up on the auditor's reports again, and I'll just quickly cover that. In terms of the audit reports that are issued, we do issue a number of reports in connection with the audit. Again, the main report is the report on the financial statements. We did issue unmodified clean opinions on your financial statements. Our opinion does cover multiple statements within the financial statements. It covers your governmental activities, your business type activities, which is your sewer operations. Each of your major funds, which for the town was your general fund and capital project funds. And then we issue an opinion on what we consider to be the aggregate remaining fund information, and that includes all of your non-major special revenue funds, capital project funds, pension trust funds, and your agency funds. So again, in terms of the report that the board would want to see in the financial statements, you would want to see an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. In addition, we also issue a report on compliance and on internal control over financial reporting. Again, important to note here that we do not actually express an opinion on your compliance with laws or regulations or on the effectiveness of your internal control. To the extent during the course of performing our audit procedures, we identify what we consider to be material noncompliance with a law or regulation, or a material weakness or significant deficiency in your internal control. Again, we're required to include it in this letter. So we did not report any material noncompliance of laws or regulations, and we did not report any material weaknesses in your internal control. Consistent with findings that have been reported in the past, we did report a significant deficiency over internal control over financial reporting, and that is summarized on the next slide. Again, as I mentioned, during the course of performing the audit, the expectation under our auditing standards is that really at the end of the day, there's no audit adjustments. All adjustments should be identified and recorded by management before we actually come and perform the audit. There are still a couple of areas within the town where we do provide some additional assistance in recording some of the activity. This relates to some of the tax and sewer assessment receivables, also to properly record year-end accruals and deferrals for certain education grants. We had some adjustments to reconcile some of the interfund balances and activities as well. And again, some of our adjustments, we had to report the sewer fund on a full accrual basis of the county.
It's the first time you've done that, correct? Reported the sewage fund on a full accrual?
It's always been reported on a full accrual basis of accounting. So again, these are areas where we would like to see management actually record the adjustments before we actually commence the audit. As part of the corrective action plan, we have agreed to spend some additional time during the planning process this year going over these areas with management in hopes that they would be able to record these adjustments before we actually come and perform the audit. Again, so not a material weakness. As I mentioned to Bud, some towns will just live with this finding, understanding that they don't have a CPA in-house. Again, I do think these are areas that can be done internally, and so the hope will be that this will be addressed next year. All right. Any questions as far as that finding goes? And just to clarify, these are all year-end adjustments that are recorded for financial reporting purposes. They really do not have an impact on your budgetary results. And so again, that's also primarily why, again, it's not really considered to be a material weakness in business.
We interrupted you when you were asking that question, or Mike was answering it, I don't remember which.
Well, Mike was answering it, and you said that we recommend that all funds be maintained in an accounting system, and you were about to answer that, or I didn't understand the answer.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't get to fully clarify. So there are a couple of funds that are included in the financial statements that are not being tracked on a general ledger system. An example of that would be your pension trust fund. You do get investment statements on a quarterly basis, typically on a quarterly basis. That information ultimately will flow into your financial statements. The recommendation is that, even though you're not really recording or the actual activity within the pension trust fund, you should be reflecting that on your general ledger. So again, you'd be able to print a trial balance from your accounting system that would agree with what's in the financial statements. Right now, that support is just your investment statements.
What about we have several funds that are, I don't know how to put it, they're outside of the town's purview, but they're town agency, the Garden Club, and all of their money comes from donations from people. There is no tax support of that, for instance. Do you audit that? Do you look at that during your time?
It depends on how much it is and where it's actually recorded within the town accounts. My guess is that there's probably some stuff that is outside of the town's financial statements, but there's probably other activity that is included in some of those other funds. What was that one fund?
The community health.
The one we chatted about, we chat back and forth on some of these issues before it gets here, but the example that you may be referring to is the community health and the library, Friends of the Library. They're somewhere in here, but I'm not sure they're in here with as much intensity as they should be. And Mike's question earlier is, they may be maintained on a separate ledger system and brought into the town financials as part of the audit. And what they're recommending is they be brought into the entire ledger system, so that Kathy maintains everything on the same system.
Okay, that's exactly the point I was
They're
getting to.
in the audit. I give you comfort, they're in the audit.
Okay.
Correct.
I know that in the past, they were kept outside in a different computer system, software system.
But they're still part of the town's obligation, so they're in these numbers.
Okay, they are. But I was hoping that it would, your recommendation is that they should all be on one system.
Correct.
Which I also agree with, so, okay.
Yeah.
Is that any account that would use the town's tax ID number? Should be.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and we run into these issues with some of these, I call them ancillary programs, where they end up using the towns in, maybe a case where.
Is that the reason that they are, the Friends of the Library and whatnot, is that the reason they're in? Why they don't have their own separate, why they're included in the town at all? Why are they?
They're town agencies. Versus Community Health Committee is.
Well, the Community Health, yes, but the Friends of the Library?
I don't know
I think
about
they're
that.
probably using the town's tax.
Well, that's what I'm wondering,
purchases and
why
things
they're
like
part
that.
of the system. I mean,
think.
Yeah,
I think.
because, yeah,
So, yeah.
I'm just curious as to why.
Well, that one might be an outlier, but most of the funds are, it could be when they were redoing the upstairs in the auditorium. That was definitely part of but the funds were a bit outside, all said and done at this point. I think that one example might be a bit of an outlier, though. Mike, you were saying.
And that would ultimately, I guess, provide a basis for recording it within the system. So understanding what truly the town's responsibilities are associated with that. And again, making sure that you're accounting for it correctly in the governmental world. Is it a fiduciary activity, a custodial activity, an agency transaction? There's different ways that they can ultimately be presented within the financial statements.
In those organizations, are such small dollar amounts. That
They are. Yeah,
in
we're
the overall
not.
scheme of things,
They're tiny dollar amounts.
Exactly.
But still, you still have to account, even if it were $1,000, you have to account for that.
Yep.
Okay.
Moving along, we do issue reports in connection with the state single audit. We issue a report on compliance and on internal control at the state financial assistance level. Here we are actually expressing an opinion on your compliance with your major state programs. For fiscal year 2018, total state financial assistance expended was about $1.8 million. Of that, about $374,000 was considered non-exempt and subject to our audit work. The major programs for the town was the municipal grant and aid for $106,000 and the town aid road grants for $198,000. We did issue unmodified clean opinions on your compliance over those programs, and no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses were noted. Again, you're charging appropriate costs to those grants. This next section goes into your financial highlights, and again, I just try to capture stuff that very high level that would be of significance to the board. Your original budget did not provide for the use of fund balance. Your final budget did include additional appropriations of about $113,000. The significant components of that was a $50,000 appropriation to fund road maintenance costs, and then $62,000 to fund additional police services. In addition, the budget was revised and approved at a special town meeting to reflect the added revenue and expenditures and the amount of $104,000 that resulted from the receipt of the municipal project grant from the state of Connecticut. Overall, your actual net change in fund balance on a budgetary basis was an increase of $462,000. So again, you plan to use fund balance of about $113,000, but you actually return to your fund balance $462,000. Your revenues were about $487,000 more than budgeted. That was a result of really favorable budgetary revenues relating to the police special private duty reimbursements, as well as the sewer assessments that were collected. In addition, your overall expenditures were about $129,000 less than budgeted. Again, there are detailed budget to actual schedules within the financial statements if you're looking for a little more detail in terms of, at the end of the day, there were no audit adjustments that I would say would have impacted your budget to actual reports that are reported to you on a monthly basis compared to what's included in the financial statements.
We're not really looking at seeing the sewer assessment, the fees that come in. We don't really see them. Those are in that one of those separate accounts.
We need to get terms right. We budget sewer assessments. We pay the debt.
We pay the debt.
Sewer assessment is part of the way that those who benefit from the sewer pay the town, and we use those funds to mingle with taxes to pay the debt. There is a difference between sewer assessment and the fees that the sewer, the Water Pollution Control Authority collects from customers to run their operations. We do not see that.
That's what I'm thinking. Sorry.
We don't see that. It's not part of our budget.
That's where, yeah, sorry.
So again, from an audit perspective, it was a very favorable budgetary year. The next slide goes over your governmental fund financial highlights. Again, this includes your general fund on a GAAP basis, as well as all of your special revenue and capital project funds. Your combined ending fund balances totaled about $1.8 million. That was an increase of about $358,000 from the prior year. Your total fund balance consisted of about $1.4 million in the general fund. Of that, approximately $1.2 million is considered unassigned and basically available for spending. In terms of your capital project fund, that did have a overall total fund balance of about $178,000. $293,000, which is committed for capital projects. And then there was a $115,000 unassigned deficit within the capital project fund. Again, as part of the audit process, we look at funds that have deficit fund balances. In this case, based on subsequent discussions with management, those deficits do not represent what I'll call an overspending of a capital project. They really relate to some accounting issues between the interfunds in prior years, and so that will be ultimately corrected in the subsequent fiscal year's audit. In addition, in terms of all of your other funds, you had a fund balance of about $279,000. All of those funds are restricted, committed, or assigned for various purposes. The one thing I will point out is you did have a deficit fund balance in the school cafeteria fund of approximately $41,000. So again, that will need to get funded in future years. Overall, the unassigned fund balance of the general fund as of June 30, 2018 totaled of $1.2 million, and that represented approximately 7.4% of your general fund expenditures and other finances uses. That's sufficient to cover approximately 0.9 months of general fund operating expenditures.
I'm going to slow you down and grab the terms.
Yep.
First paragraph, combined ending fund balances as of June 30, 2018 was $1.88 million. And if you look further down, you will see unassigned fund balance of general fund as of June 30 of $1.248. We sit here and talk about the $1.248. The difference is all those other funds that Mike made reference to. Part of your funds in health, part of sewer funds, part of the library funds. We could keep on going. That us, do not perceive it available to pay for town stuff, technical term.
Correct.
Mike, could you, I'm a bit taken aback. I'm taken aback that you perceive our capital projects fund, which sits off to the side, to have been committed to any capital projects. How did you determine that?
Well, if it's not in the general fund, then it needs to be either committed or assigned for a specific purpose. So
then it's just a generic capital fund?
Correct.
Okay.
So I can't remember offhand. There's separate capital accounts that have monies available in them. So I don't know if they are truly committed for a specific project, if it was leftover money from an old project. But at the end of the day, I mean, I don't think you have any specific projects that are committed for use for those funds.
And that is mine. We have, in prior years, we would put money away anticipating various large things would come to us eventually. I did not think of them as committed. So you say committed for capital projects, right, to committed to a capital. Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah. So absent a resolution from the Board of Finance, those funds would stay within that capital project and would be used for capital projects. All right.
Just the unassigned fund balance, and you're saying 7.41%, and that would cover about 9 months of operating expenditures. How does that look on the total scope, I guess? I mean, do you feel comfortable with that, or is that something that we really should be working on to build up?
So the recommendation from the GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association, they recommend that all governments, regardless of size, maintain a minimum of 2 months of general fund operating expenditures, which would be closer to roughly 16%. I believe this percentage has actually gone up over the past couple of years.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It has,
Yeah. Now, you know, if you were thinking about going out for bonding, in terms of rating agencies, they may view this as being a low fund balance percentage. But again, there's a lot more that goes into that rating than just your overall fund balance percentage. In addition to providing a reserve ultimately for unexpected costs, the fund balance would also be, utilized for liquidity in terms of if you had to finance any short-term capital projects or anything along those lines. So again, I think when you look at Municipalities in general, I think you're on the lower side of things. But again, it hasn't been an issue for you in the past either, so.
I appreciate that. There have been some nights that I have lost some sleep, and I think Angus may have gotten sleep. When the prior governor's administration, there was talk they were not going to provide taxes, certain funds to towns. That upset us quite a bit. The number is low, we recognize, but if you consider where we've come from, we should be very proud. I'm going to repeat two things you said. One, your profession or any profession that talks about this thing says 2 months. I've heard that before. This is a phrase where you put months. Your profession puts months, compares our deficit or surplus to a 2 month. While it's a good measure, it never made, I do not wish to be insulting, but it never made a whole lot of sense. I mean, to me, why would I suddenly not have any dollars coming in? But it's the way you have been trained to talk about, right?
So you just mean, I think putting in months perspective, it gives a user the idea of, okay, if you didn't have money coming in, what would you have available to fund for a period of time? Obviously for municipalities, every 6 months you get a huge cash inflow with your taxes. But again, it is, for whatever reason, if your tax collections didn't come out to where you had estimated they would come out, again, this would provide some additional liquidity for that purpose.
And I assure you, we're never, how do I want to set this up? Surprises happen, almost to the point where they're no longer surprises. Whatever isn't in the budget will be somebody will come and ask for it. So reaching to your surplus is very important. Right. We have learned that.
It's a good question. The next slide goes over your government-wide financial statements, and this is where the accounting standards aim to report the town as if it was a corporate entity. So it includes all of your assets, your capital assets, your infrastructure, and all of the related debt on your actual balance sheet. So that includes any long-term debt, as well as net pension or other post-employment benefit liabilities. Overall, the town did report an unrestricted deficit in its net position of about $620,000. Again, that's really a combination of the lower fund balance percentage in the general fund, as well as the town's liabilities for pension and other post-employment benefits, which you are actually funding over time. So again, if that was fully funded, then you would probably have a positive net position. The fact that you are unfunded on some of those pension plans, as long as you continue to make your annual required contributions and you use reasonable assumptions, that's not really an issue. I would expect to see a town have a deficit in its net position. As far as your net pension liabilities, they did decrease about $3,000 from the prior year. Your net pension liability for the town plan was about $1.2 million. That is 71% funded using a discount rate of 6.25%. Again, we are looking at the reasonableness of your discount rate, and that is a reasonable discount rate to be utilizing. For your net pension liability for your volunteer firefighters plan, that has a net pension liability of about $378,000. Again, that's 54% funded, also at that discount rate of about 6.25%. So again, in terms of the overall funding percentages, the recommendation would be to have plans roughly 80% funded. You are below those funding percentages. All that means is your annual required contributions is going to be a little bit higher. So again, as long as you continue to make your annual required contributions, you will work towards those funding percentages. When you go through the financial statements, if you were comparing them to the prior year, you will notice a change relating to other post-employment benefits. The town was required to implement a new accounting standard, GASB Statement Number 75, Accounting and Financial Reporting for Post-Employment Benefits Other Than Pensions. The adoption of that statement did result in some additional disclosures within your financial statements. This reflects your retiree health benefits for eligible employees of the Board of Education. The actuarial determined liability for those benefits totaled about $524,000 as of year end. Again, that is ultimately funded on a pay-as-you-go basis. And that liability does represent an implicit liability. So again, there's no true cash component to that liability to the town.
This is, I think you folks found it 2 years ago. Employees at the school are given the opportunity when they retire to pay for their own health insurance, okay? And while it is on our books, this is not an obligation we ask our town to pay for.
Correct. Yeah.
But it is here.
The accounting guidance is that ultimately your rates that you're charging to active employees may be a little bit higher because you are including a population that is older in your overall pool, and so this tries to quantify, what that overall benefit actually is. And again, this is over a period of time. So although it does look like a significant amount, again, it does include a number of years in which those employees are able to continue to have access to the health insurance plan. Have a bullet here on the state teachers retirement system, the net pension liability and the net OPEB liability attributed to the Board of Education's eligible employees for the town totaled $5.6 million and $1.5 million respectively. So important to note that these liabilities are not currently recorded on the town's financial statements. It's only included as a disclosure. Those liabilities, the towns have no legal requirement to fund those obligations. The total on-behalf payments that were made by the state of Connecticut into those plans for the town totaled approximately $431,000. So again, I know there's been discussion at the state level about possibly pushing some of these costs down onto the town. This just kind of gives you an idea of how much that is attributed to the town of Deep River.
So if it was 25%, it would be 25% of the
431.
Of the 431. Okay.
Is that true? If we were required to begin to make contributions to minimize the shortfall in the state budget, wouldn't it be based off the 5.6 million?
It's actually based typically on the annual required contribution. So
on behalf, they make, the state is making $431,000 contribution to the teachers of the town of Deep River?
Correct, on an annual basis.
Got it.
So a little over 100.
And that does not take into consideration the amounts that they're making on behalf of Region 4. So that is just your elementary school. Yeah. So these are very, very, very big numbers. This next section just goes over our required communications. Again, these communications are required by our auditing standards. The first bullet here talks about our responsibilities under our auditing standards. Again, although we do assist in the preparation of the financial statements, the financials are the responsibility of management. All of the information that has been included in the financial statements did come from management. Again, it's our responsibility to perform our audit procedures and express our opinion on the financial statements. In terms of the planned scope and timing of the audit, again, there was no changes in the overall scope of work that was originally agreed upon. We did have some timing delays, which were primarily attributed to scheduling issues at the firm that resulted in extension requests through mid-February. So as we kind of look forward, I know it's the town's intention is to be able to file without having to file for an extension. So again, we are continuing to move up your audit time from the prior year in hopes to be able to issue by the December 31st deadline.
Yeah, that's very much appreciated.
In terms of overall significant audit findings, again, we do look at your accounting policies and practices. The only thing of here to note is that the town, again, did implement a new accounting standard on other post-employment benefits. There were no significant difficulties encountered in performing the audit. Again, we did incur some additional time related to assisting the town in some of those year-end reconciliation and closing entries. But other than that, again, we didn't run into any significant audit issues. There were no uncorrected misstatements. So again, if during the course of performing the audit, we identified an adjustment that we proposed and management elected not to record it, we would be required to inform you of that adjustment. There were no disagreements with management. We did obtain a management representation letter as part of performing the audit. There was nothing unusual in that letter that we would be required to inform you of. And again, we weren't aware of any management consultations with any other independent accountants. Again, if we were, we would have to inform you of that communication. And that ultimately concludes what I had in terms of the overall presentation. The other thing I'll point out as you go through the reports, we did issue a separate letter on internal control with some recommendations regarding best practices. Again, those are really recommendations for management and consideration for management. We'll reevaluate those in connection with our subsequent audit, but they do not rise to the level, again, that I would have to report it to the board.
Have any thoughts? We'll look at the, and only because I was going to have you look at the annual report. And I was going to turn you to page 3, management discussion and analysis. And everything Mike said is on here. So I just, first sentence, as management of the town of Deep River, we offer readers of the town's financial statements. That we is us. We as the Board of Finance have the financial obligations for the town. So the auditors report to the Board of Finance. So this is our letter to the citizens. That's what I just wanted to make sure you do. So what is, I'll find it interesting. If you look at the first one, the assets and deferred outflows of resources, we won't get into that of the town, exceed its liabilities deferred inflows. If you look on 2 pages over, you will find all the numbers there. But accountants spend a lot of time talking about assets. These are the things that are used to provide services to our citizens. The reason I bring it up is we rarely in our monthly meetings, almost never do we worry about the assets, which is what accounting is all about. So we worry about cash flow on a monthly basis. So we sometimes miss what the financial statement is attempting to say. So there is, what is the number? 20,824,045 net position, a catchy term for public financing. That is the assets. That is our roads. That is our bridges, that is our parks, that is our school. We have accumulated them. For those of us who spend much of their life working for a firm that made money, you end up in an equity position. There's a net position here because no one claims these things other than the citizens of the town. So the citizens have $20 million of assets. It's as much as you never think about it when you drive down Main Street, but that is an asset that you own. So. Any other questions, folks? Mike and Lauren will be around, especially Lauren will be around soon. When will you first be arriving? August is your, okay.
Normally we come out and do planning around July, August time, and then we'll come back in the fall.
That's why we invited you to Christmas.
That's right. We're glad to have you, so thank you. Have you sent us the last bill this should be on? I noticed talking about cash flow, we still haven't been paid your last year. Is that something you as a partner worry about?
Now that you mention it, it's speaking like that.
It does seem like something you might be
sitting back
wondering
here.
about.
So it is the end of May, so I will be going through that as part of the reconciliation process.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much, folks. We'll
Just trying to help you with the cash flow.
we do appreciate that. We do appreciate that.
So we have some light reading to do.
And if you have any questions at any point in time, we're here periodically throughout the year and be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess the next item traditionally on our agenda, or even earlier, would have been audience of citizens. Seeing none, hearing none, I will move on to treasurer's report, Donnie.
Okay, thanks. Before I start, I just wanted to say to you, Bud, that I thought you did a tremendous job in presenting the budget to our citizens. And it's the first time I can remember there wasn't one question.
That was amazing.
That was disconcerting.
I'm not sure that should be the test of how good a job I did, but anyhow, that is true. Yeah.
But I thought, no, I did. I thought you did a great job.
Shock and awe.
The
zeros.
Bill, if you're looking for a smile, let's see that same group next year.
Yeah.
See if there's no questions then.
Job well done. So anyway, I just thought I'd start with the general fund account balances, and you'll see we're at $3,875,705. And if you compare that to where we were last month, balances have changed by only $278,373. I think a lot of that has to do with we did receive our education cost sharing monies that came in April 30th. Received $835,465. The town actually had budgeted $645,978, so there was a net there of $189,487. But again, having said that, we were probably that money was used kind of to fund everything for the month, pretty much. I only made one transfer of funds to our general fund, and that was only for $200,000 during that last month. So we did receive 2018, 2019, the $1,670,330 for our education cost sharing monies, the ECS. And then if you look actually from last year where we are, we're just regarding the general fund balances. We're up by about $996,497. If you look at total deposits, so if you go down to the bottom of the page where we're at $4,833,071, there was a decrease from where we were last year of only $199,038. And as far as from year to year, we're actually up $1,099,304 from last year to this year. So just want to let you know that. A couple things coming up. We do have a couple payments coming up. One is USDA sewer bond, which was issued on June 23rd, 2017 for 40 years, matures on 6/27/2056. That was for $605,000 at 2.25% interest rate. We have a principal payment due on June 23rd of $23,099. That's called a PAD. It's a pre-authorized debit agreement that will just take the monies out of our general fund account. And then if we look just down the road to July, we have our boiler payment for the Deep River Elementary School. That was a 7-year note. Began in 2017 when it was issued, and that it's over in 2023. It was for $200,000 to Dime Bank. It's $28,571 that we pay in principal every year. So we've paid 2017 and 18, so we've reduced that down to $142,858. When we make the July payment, we'll be down to $114,287. So I think, unless you have any questions, I think that's pretty much all I have. I think we're in very good shape as we head to the end of the fiscal year. And again, you look, we've got again $3,875,000 available. So yeah, I think we're in very good shape.
I see tax ID at the top. You asked a question about tax ID. Do all of the library does help? They all are under our tax ID.
These accounts here are all using the tax ID number for the town. I'm not sure, like you mentioned, community health, Friends of the Deep River Library. I'm not sure if I would.
Community health definitely does.
Okay.
Community health is-
I would tend to think probably Friends of the Deep River Library
I'd have
do
to,
also.
I'd have to ask, my wife's at their meeting tonight, right now, and she's on that. My wife and daughter are both on that committee.
So whether those.
I asked them why myself. and they didn't.
It seems logical that they would, but Friends of the Deep River Library, they seem someone has a sheet where they add money in, take money out, where the community fund does go through the, Kathy does write
That's
checks,
done right
collects dollars.
upstairs,
Somewhere
but-
upstairs is a good answer.
It's done by our accounts manager, controlled by them,
somewhere up there.
even though all of that money is donated. That's not tax money, we don't use any.
I always thought it was odd, do people write a check for your friend, and while it's tax deductible, it's tax deductible, it's paid to the town? Can't deduct everything you pay to the town.
I'm not an accountant, so I won't answer that question, but it's certainly a charity.
Certainly a charity, so, okay, done.
And all of those funds, the library fund and the garden club and whatever, those are all autonomous. They are self-decisive about what they're doing with that money. It's donated money, it's not tax money from the town. So they can do whatever they want with that money.
Not whatever they want,
No,
but
not
whatever
whatever they want.
they
Well, I
believe that
mean,
would.
within the scope
Yes.
of their
Yep.
organization.
Yep.
Is there any oversight for it? What, you know, is there
Just
a
by
collective-
their board.
In the case of the Community Health Committee, the rules, when it was started 9 years ago, is the Board of Finance can call the chairman of the Community Health Committee at any time. Of course, the records are kept right upstairs, so you can have access to them at any time. Board of Selectmen, in fact, we serve at the behest of the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen can disband us if we went outside of our charge, which was originally done by Art Smith and Art Thompson and Dave Oliveira many years ago. So we have that paperwork, we have that charge, we stay within it. I'm sure a lot of these other groups also do the same thing, but if we were well outside of the bounds of good taste, I would imagine we'd be called up by a certain Mr. McDonald and asked to explain what we're doing, and well, we should.
Are all of your checks signed by the selectmen?
For the CHC,
And
the two selectmen can sign a check. I can as the chairman, and Tom, and there's one other person that Tom works with, Jane, is that right?
Jane Mauer, she's the
Yep.
assistant.
So all of those people could sign a check for the CHC, but the first selectman cannot. I don't know what the rules are for the other groups.
Okay. All righty. Next item would most likely be recommendations or conversations from the selectmen.
Okay. I don't have much to report or recommend at this point, other than I think I have made my final phone call to the state of Connecticut Department of Education. And while we disagree quite a bit about the definition of the word efficiency and how it's used in the statutes, we are not going to get granted this waiver. So I spoke with them. 50% of my conversation today was what the process is, and really we just need to. We've already done the legal process with the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and the town meeting authorizing this, were this waiver to be denied. Now it's really just a matter of appropriating the money physically and alerting the state that the money has gone back to the elementary school. All that said, in all of the conversation, and it was a bad bit of proofreading on my part, but I continued to refer to this as a $68,000 shortfall. In reality, it was a $68,481 shortfall. So we went to the town meeting with a $68,000 bill to go to the school. We need to appropriate another $481 in order to do that. I don't think we need to, I don't think at that amount it needs to go to a town meeting or anything like that, but it just needs to be done. So we will send them the check for the 68,481, but I think we need to have an authorization from the Board of Finance to do that. The additional $481.
Angus, we're sending that money to the state or to the school?
To the school, Deep River Elementary School in particular.
Do we have the exact amount already?
68,481.
Even. 30 cents.
No. Well, I'll tell you next month.
Sure.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Wasn't that money supposed to be used for, once, we have to give it to the school, I understand that.
Yeah, and
So
their
was it supposed to be
intent.
used for improvements to the school?
Yes, yeah. Well, we don't have any control over that.
Correct.
We do have an agreement that that's what's going to happen. But they've had a couple of whacks with some special ed things and other things, so, as I said, we don't have any real control over it, but I anticipate that it will be used for some of the heating systems and things like that.
Could you summarize what the state said, why they denied it? I mean, 5 or
Yes,
6 sentences?
and this was the interesting part of today's conversation. The state considers efficiency. They consider the definition of efficiency in this statute to be saving directly attributed to regionalized services. So if we were able to save by sharing a school bus with Chester, and that's just a dumb example, but it's the first thing that popped into my head, then we could utilize that, we could attribute that to the cut in the budget. But they do not believe, and this is where our conversation became circular, that the retirement of a teacher and the this is a double negative, and not replacing that teacher, but at the same time, because of the drop in population, we did not increase class sizes, we didn't lose any programs. I consider that an efficiency. The Board of Education considered it efficiency, and all of the boards at this table considered that an efficiency. The state of Connecticut does not.
They figured it a wash.
They figured you should replace that teacher or keep the budget the same, and it makes no sense whatsoever. And again, the conversation was very frustrating. In the end, the person I was speaking with said that she had suggested to legislators that this be considered an efficiency because there are 3 other towns that are in the exact same description of that. Of course, in any of our previous conversations, none of that was ever mentioned to me. So I've already contacted the 2 towns, I've contacted Cost, that because we still have a week left in session, I want to apply pressure that they can change this rule in MBR. It will not help us this year, and I think this was a one-off for us, but it may help us or other communities in the future to change the legislation to allow for an efficiency as we just described, as we just experienced, to be allowed to drop that cost. I don't know that we have got much of a chance given the time frame, but if we don't ask, we definitely don't have a chance. So we will try. So I guess I would ask for you to appropriate that additional cost.
Everyone understand? Any questions?
I don't want to make the motion.
This was entirely my fault. I did not proofread the language in the call of the meeting well. I really looked at the language, I didn't look at the number. It started with a 68 and I just assumed that was it. And it was just a bad use of language as I went through the process. It just became 68,000. It was an easier number than 68,481.
Anyone make a motion?
Well, I make a motion then that we appropriate $68,481.
No, you don't have to do the
shortfall.
400.
Oh, excuse me, $481
Right.
not the 68,000.
It's already the town.
Sorry.
That's all right.
To cover the shortfall because of the denial of our waiver.
Yep.
And the money is to go to the Deep River Elementary School.
I will second it. But I won't make it.
A second from our conservative wing. Any further discussion of the motion? Let's call a vote. All in favor of increasing the 68,400? Please, what was the next number?
481.
481. Please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. It's done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The only other thing that I really have to say today is just thank you all around this table for the work and effort that went into this budget. It was a long process, and it was a difficult budget. I think it's a good budget. But we'll see as we go through the year, we'll see. And we are reaping the benefits of this year, of last year's state budget coming in higher than what was projected at the time we prepared that. We don't have any idea yet where we're gonna land. So hopefully it works in the same direction. Yeah, I don't expect it to.
Back to the north. Will you comment on the highway funds, that we certainly increased the highway funds, and you've got...
Well, we have got proposals out for about $520,000 or so of work to do on roads. With the additional $50,000, we've got about $420,000 available for us now. So we will get a good portion of those done. Some of this we still have to wait for the town. We have Town Aid Road has come in, but I think I know that we are still waiting for the municipal projects. That's $104,000 this year. So we're still waiting on that, and that'll push us over the edge, and we should be able to do maybe a couple other small improvements.
That's right, the Town Aid roads that came in on 426
Yeah.
for $98,950.
Right, so that's fully funded now. It is the grants for municipal projects of 104 that we're waiting on.
So that's why that money's sitting there at 47%.
Correct.
Did we hear anything yet on the fire truck?
No, I have not, although I read today exactly what I've been saying. There were only 2,000 towns that applied for the fire truck money, and if you had not heard yet, then you are still in the running. So, I'm as time is going on, I've gone up and down and up and down, and I don't know, but it will be a real boon for us if we can get that.
That'd be great if
Yeah.
it comes through.
Yeah.
Although I would not have said only 2,000 towns.
No, I know. Well,
it seemed like a
five-
pretty big number.
A year ago, 5,000 plus.
Yeah.
So, there were a lot more no's last year than there are going to be this year.
Did they say how many they give?
They did not. They have a total amount of
money.
they have an amount of money that comes down to, yeah.
With the approval of the budget, have you officially sent the fire department off to find a truck? What is the way you do that?
Yeah, oh yeah. It was in the back of that room.
Okay.
That night.
And they will begin, and we will watch the timing.
They've already begun. They had the process pretty well started last year. It's just a matter of getting things going again. And I get, believe me, I still am asking them to look for demos, look for trucks that are already out there, that are already built, that if all we have to do is paint it, and we save $100,000 on it, then that would be the way for us to go.
Excellent. All right, folks, should we look at the budget that was sent to us by Kathy? I remind you, we are in May. That's the 11th out of 12 months. So my suggested rule of thumb, we should have about 10% left in each category. Anything greater than that is, I'm going to hint, is good, and anything less deserves an attention.
I'll be honest, I have not had an opportunity to go through this, but look carefully. I just looked at it briefly, so.
And I hint there, you will find nothing particularly new. You will find nothing new, for instance, in elections. We have said that we knew that The referendum would put us over, and the referendum has put us over by $1,000. So it's, I have nothing, there's nothing that has particularly jumped out at me. I did absent Angus this time because he was busy. I attempted to do what Angus and I had done earlier in the month, go through each line item and attempt to identify things that would be spent, would not be spent. I have the $250,000 of surplus that I announced or shared with the town, I think continues to be a valid number.
Yeah.
So, of surplus.
And that really is attributable to the additional monies from the state. That was a big part of it.
It is, if I was to spin a tale, it is attributed to the monies from the state. We did not borrow.
We did not borrow.
We did not borrow, which was $144,000.
Yeah.
We did not get the opportunity to put a roof on the school, which is $200. While
We did spend 20-something on that.
we did, yes, and, yes. and-
Right.
But that's it. What is the other word I went to? What was the other one I wanted to comment on? Okay. There is, I suggested if you were to do what I did, you would find that we spent, lots of things are over, lots of things are below, but all the things we just went through, the increased funds from the state coming in, and we're still waiting for, what's your number, 104, 106?
104.
Which come in every year in June, so
Yep.
that is important to our numbers, but I believe it continues to be a good number, if not slightly on the conservative side.
The title changes for the various different positions, those will be effective and will be changed in July.
And again, if you folks want to go through it, I mean, you'll see in the Capitol that we authorized the fire department to go out and acquire, the turnout gear. There's still about $30,000 that they have not spent, but I'm assuming that it will be spent.
Well, they're spending it right now on, the equipment. We remember we spoke about getting, they had asked for an additional 35,000, I think. On,
34 something,
yeah.
it's pretty close to 35.
And
So, yeah.
we had suggested that combined efforts, we can get that done this fiscal year.
And the other thing that came in below what we estimated in this budget was the trucks. We had budgeted 325 for vehicles, of which you've encouraged me to think there's still about $50,000 less than that to accomplish. So these all contribute to the surplus. Shortfall in expenditures.
Right.
Let's make sure I had some
like being
dignity.
overserved.
A double negative. I wanted to make sure I had some dignity in my answer. Yep. All right, folks, is there anything else that we did talk about?
No.
We meet, what is the date of our next meeting? We meet June something, right?
Yeah, just a moment.
June 25th, I think.
That's correct.
Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, yep, Tuesday, June 25th.
We'll try to have a quicker selectmen's meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Citizens place demands upon you.
It's nice to have some company.
That's not what that was.
That's right.
We have a motion.
We do.
We do. We
Yeah.
have a first, we have a second.
Second.
There we go.
Are you second, you firsting and seconding your
No,
motion?
he's second, first, yeah.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. See everyone next month.
All right.
Yes.
Not before.